All right, I want to start by asking everybody a question because I want this to be as inclusive as we can, and feel free to answer out loud and we can share and do this together. Sound good? Okay. Have you ever put time and effort into preparing for something? If so, let me see your hands. Okay, most people. Maybe it's an exam, maybe it's a driver's test. Give me some examples. What are those things that you might have prepared for? Wedding. That probably takes a bit of preparation, okay. Go ahead. Interview, okay. Good one, that's lots of preparation. Nada? When guests are coming for lunch, perfect, okay. 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 Okay, so saving people in distress you need to prepare for. Awesome. Traveling, a trip, sure. You might have to plan that. Competitions, okay. Family, you have to prepare for family. Exam, okay. A speech, yeah. Maybe a prayer, maybe reading some scripture. Oh, changing my brakes, yep. Thank you, Tata, for doing that yesterday. Or going to do it. To actually do a job, it takes preparation. You can't just, some people might have the privilege of just showing up, but sometimes it takes a little bit of effort. Okay, so it sounds like we've all had some sort of experience of preparation. Maybe you attended a class, maybe you had to study for an exam, you had to attend a study group, maybe you had to take some piano lessons before you did a piano exam. Maybe we talked about some events, so preparing for a wedding, preparing for a lunch. You have to make a guest list, take care of the food, music, whatever might be associated with it. For a vacation, we heard you have to book the flights, transportation, where are you going to stay, what are you going to do? Lots of things to think about, lots of time and energy. A lot of the examples that you guys gave are ones I'm familiar with, maybe not helping people in distress. I'm not really trained for that. But all of these other examples I feel like I've done before and I've kind of experienced preparing and seen what that's like. But there's one area where I'm much less confident in for preparing for, and that's competing in a sport. I am not, I have very little experience there. So I grew up, playing sports outside with kids and casually, and maybe the closest that I got to competing was with the church volleyball team. But I didn't really truly participate in competing in a sport. So I thought it was pretty funny because someone asked me earlier, what does it take to prepare for something like this? And it takes me a bit of time and thinking, and I probably have been thinking about this topic of preparation and what it takes to prepare for a few months now. And when I looked at the date that I was doing this topic on, it's funny enough, it's during the Olympics. So another example of an event or a situation where you have to prepare for. And I can't not mention the Olympics, because here's an example where you see lots of self-discipline, people really dedicating a lot of time and effort and energy and their whole life to this. So I wanted to have a few honorable mentions. So the first one I wanted to mention was there's an American hurdler named Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone. She broke a world record, which was her own world record actually this year, and she's super dedicated to her sport and truly is one of the best hurdlers in the world. So we got to see her break a world record this week. We have the Canadian swimmer, Summer McIntosh, that did some incredible things at age 17, got so many medals in this Olympic Games. And I thought it was so interesting. Her family was so dedicated to help her that they moved down to Florida to be able to support her in this as well. Then we have Armand Duplantis, who's a Swedish-American pole vaulter who also broke a world record, but he had already won the gold and basically tried to break the record for the fans. So you can truly see an example as someone super dedicated to their sport, but also loves it and loves the community, which I thought was really neat to see in his example. And then the last one we'll share for this Olympics is Simone Biles from the States as well. She has the most Olympic medals by a U.S. gymnast. Something interesting, too, that I discovered was that she actually didn't really compete much in 2020. She only got the bronze then and left because she wasn't feeling well, but came back and then did what she did at this Olympics. So another example of somebody that maybe didn't have their best event a few years ago, came back and showed what she could do. So that was really cool to see. And I'm sure there's lots of other examples we can think of, but I can truly admire the work and effort it must have taken all of them. Oh, I forgot about Djokovic. He's actually coming later, don't worry. Okay, so I can truly admire this effort and observe at this point in my life. But when I was in grade 9, I was in gym class, and I kept making excuses. Ask my parents, they'll tell you all about it. But I kept making excuses to avoid all of the running parts as much as possible, even to the point where I got a doctor's note for this knee pain that I had. So I really wasn't good at it, and I really didn't like that experience of not being good at something. And I started to compare myself to other people. I didn't like being at the back of the pack. At this point in my life, I really didn't understand how much effort it would take to be good at something like this. And I just wanted to give up. So all I could focus on was I didn't like it, it was embarrassing, and I didn't really have the experience or knowledge. So I didn't even know anything really about paces. I thought jogging wasn't really a thing. It's either you're walking or running. I really didn't realize all of the effort involved. So imagine me telling myself, probably for about almost 20 years, this type of self-talk is not going to set me up for success, and it's not very motivating. But something changed a few years ago. So I met this person, and I finally quickly saw how much time and effort it takes and dedication in training. Seeing how disciplined Jacob is in his training and how much he actually really enjoys the training caught my eye, amongst other things. But this truly caught my eye, and I was hearing about his story and his experience about being at the back of the pack, 200th at cross country, and to have some of the fastest times now. I finally saw an example of what years of effort, or I actually opened my eyes to this example of what years and years of effort and self-discipline can do to someone. And then in our talks about health and the future and how important exercise is, I started to think, maybe I should try something. Let's try running. How hard could it be? In my mind, I was thinking, this is the laziest of the options. All you have to do is put running shoes on and go. Like, what more could you do? No gym membership required, no other equipment really required, just your own legs. I'm grateful I had 2 of them. So with the help of Jacob and his workout planning skills, he helped me think about how to add running to my walks. I really liked walking. I liked being outside. So we started at 90 seconds. I was like, I can do that. Why not? Let's do that. So that attitude of knowing you could do something really started to motivate me a little bit more and more. So I'm like, okay, I can do that. The 90 seconds was fine. At first, I wasn't really serious about it. I was doing it once in a while. And then, I thought if I want to actually build some endurance, I probably should commit to doing this more than once in a while. So then I signed up. Well, actually, Jacob signed me up for my first 5K race. I was like, 5K, how am I ever going to do that? I've never run 30 minutes, 90 seconds. Yeah, I can do. 40 minutes? Yeah, right. So I had a plan, but I had a goal now, and we had a pace in mind, and I was going to try and do my 5K in 35 minutes. I was so nervous and excited, but I at least had 4 months to prepare. By the time we signed up, I think it was January, the race was in April. So before I tell you how that went, I wanted to tell you the backstory of my own relationship with running. just so that you could see, and I could truly think about and reflect on, it wasn't just about the physical part of the training. There was a lot of mental training that I needed. So many times, and I heard this today as well, so many times I did not want to run. I really didn't want to run. Probably around 90% of the time, I didn't feel like doing it. And then I realized that other athletes don't feel like it too. And Jacob told me once, I don't feel like it either. And I was like, oh, you cannot feel like it and still do it? Interesting. Okay, let me try that. And I realized, okay, I have to work on putting my emotions aside, do what I need to do, keep doing hard things, and build my mental skills along with the physical. So at this point, I was probably running about 3 times a week, and I'm just doing some strength training, all in preparation for the race. But also while I was training and preparing for this race, I learned a lot about self-discipline and what it takes to prepare. So a few of the things I wanted to share was, the first thing I realized, I really needed to prioritize and make time for it. If I didn't have time for it, wake up earlier and go. Like, you can always prioritize the thing that you want to prioritize and the thing you make time for. You're only too busy for the things you don't really want to do, really. So I made sure to prioritize. I prioritized sleep as well. I made sure to go to sleep on time, and going to sleep on time helped me wake up earlier so that I could actually do that run before work, potentially. I focused on nutrition, thinking about having enough food and water, what I was eating, when I was eating, how much before am I eating this, what am I eating after. A big one for me was thinking about positive self-talk. One time, Jacob was running with me, and he told me, just smile. I'm like, what? Why would I smile? I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. Why am I smiling? He's like, no, you're telling your brain you're okay, so smile. So if you ever see me out there, you might see me randomly like, but smiling. So it actually helps, and just continuing to tell myself, you did this yesterday. You can do this today. So you can do this. Don't tell yourself otherwise. You can, and smile. I also started to think about the bigger picture, like, what is this actually doing? This is doing for long-term health. What kind of example am I going to give to my family one day, and so on and so forth. So there's the smile one as well. The other thing I realized was discomfort was okay. So remember when I said I made excuses all the time to not run, and my knee was hurting, and I didn't want to go do this? My knee was hurting when I was running, but I just told myself, it's okay. Like, you can do this. Your body can carry you. You're made to move. Like, let's do this. And I kept telling myself, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just go. And I can say now I have no knee pain, surprisingly. My parents don't believe me yet, but I don't, and I'm able to do it, which is really exciting. So I reminded myself discomfort is okay. The last thing I wanted to share that I realized was how important accountability was. I had support from Jacob, I had support from my family, from the community, from watching other people being so excited that I'm doing this thing. I was like, oh my gosh, people actually care. This is so cool. So I learned a lot in my own personal journey of running. So back to my race. Does anyone want to know how I did? Yeah, some people might know how I did. But I did my first ever 5K race in 33 minutes and 45 seconds, which beat my goal. So I had a goal of about 7 minutes per kilometer, and I did actually 6:40, which was really exciting. So I finished this race. I had my supporters with me. I did my personal best. I beat my goal, and I was so excited. I had such a great experience. I put so much time and training. And the race was really like my test of the training. And I can actually say that I'm looking to do more. So even yesterday, I actually ran 45 minutes straight. Like, that person that ran 90 seconds would not believe this person that's saying I did 45 minutes straight. Like, what? So the discipline I was learning through running, I started to think about spirituality. And I started to think about, okay, so objective truth, learning about God and building a relationship with Him, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes training as well. It takes time and effort, And all these things that I listed before can only help with your spiritual health too. Sleeping on time, eating well, exercising, positive self-talk, all these elements help sharpen our minds to actually reflect and seek the truth. I also started to use some time while I was running to reflect and to think and to take away all the noise of the world and have that moment with God and pray and talk to God. And I had many moments of gratitude. I remember on one run, I came back crying and I just had to tell my dad, I was like, I can't believe that I did that. I ran, and it's like God never gives up on us. It's like this overwhelming feeling that God never gives up on you. Even if you're telling yourself for 20 years you can't run. So it was a really cool moment to realize that God is always with you. And he taught me so much humility and the importance of doing hard things. So one verse that comes to mind about keeping a healthy body and your mind and building your character is, there's this really cool verse that is in 1 Peter, and it says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of suffering." So when I think about this verse, thank you. So when I think about this verse, to be able to withstand the devil, or in other words, negativity or adversity that you face, the haters, as people call it these days, you actually need to be alert. You need to be sober. So sober doesn't just mean abstaining from alcohol. It means sharpness, awareness, focus, just like you need in a sport. The example I can think of is in the Tour de France. There's a whole peloton of so many cyclists cycling. If one just doesn't focus and hits, you can have a whole crash of a bunch of cyclists and people could get really hurt. One little move can take a bunch of people down. So you need to really focus. And I love this second part too, which says, stand firm in faith. You will go through sufferings, but stay strong and fight, believe. So discomfort is okay, suffering is okay. So watching athletes, tracking some sports and triathlons, following some of the Olympics, and working on my own running, I wanted to share some of the different things I've been learning to have this champion's mind, which is what we're calling this talk today. And thinking also about how a champion's mind could relate to spiritual things. So based on this book, there's a lot of really good teachings. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I was able to find this on Jacob's shelf, but it really helped me think about some of the things I could share and relate it to spirituality as well. So a bunch of the things I wanted to share will be from the book, and I wanted to start off with a couple of quotes that the book talks about. So Kareem Abdul-Jabbar says, "Your mind is what makes everything else work." So your mind is key. I promised you Novak would show up. Novak Djokovic says, "Among the top 100 players, physically there is not much difference. It's a mental ability to handle the pressure, to play well at the right moments." So behind the scenes, you think of all of the great sporty people. I wanted to say sportists, but that's more of a Croatian, sportista. Amongst some of the greatest athletes like Phelps and Federer and Usain and Djokovic, you can see behind the scenes their mindset and their work ethic has enhanced their natural abilities. Many thousands of hours in the pool, in the court, on the track, to build up their bodies and shape their minds. This attitude is a decision, and it is also learned behavior, which requires discipline and energy to sustain. So there are a few basics that we can kind of quickly go through before we go into the mental skills training. Oh, sorry, it's kind of small. But Some of the basics that we already spoke to that I kind of had in my own experience too is making sure you have a training program, sticking to your nutrition plan, maintaining a regular sleep schedule, making sure to take time to relax and unwind, feeling what you need to feel, going through the feelings, spending quality time with others, looking for opportunities to help others, updating your life goals, and avoiding making any rash decisions. So if I think about the basics, the same things that help you in physical training can help you with spiritual training. The better sleep I get, the better reflection time I have in the morning. Spending quality time with family and the church community is also a place where we can help others and we can learn and grow and have comfort from each other. Updating your goals. For example, I had this goal of preparing this sermon for August 10th. And I had many rash thoughts leading up to it. I don't want to do this. Why am I doing this? I want to quit. It's too hard. I'm too busy. I just started a new job. But I had a goal. So I was able to make sure that I could focus and deliver that goal and kind of push these feelings aside. The book also talks about exercise, nutrition, pain, injuries, and regeneration. And I'm sure there'd be a really interesting part 2 we could talk about in terms of recovery and giving time for yourself to regenerate and what that looks like in your relationship with pain. But I don't have that much time, so that's going to be another piece that we can kind of study on our own. So think about like regeneration and recovery and what that is also involved in all of it. And thinking about the Sabbath, and we have this time to rest and recover is actually something that God gave us, which is a beautiful thing. So in the book, there's a part that's called Mastering the Mental Skills. So I wanted to kind of go through them, and there are 12 of them, and we will go through them in terms of the physical training and think about it in terms of spiritual as well. So the first one is goal setting. Your minor and short-term goals, and defining your objectives clearly and how to get there. And make sure you put it somewhere so you know that you can see it, where you can see it and be reminded of it. And then it's really important to make them achievable. So 5 questions you can ask yourself is it specific? Is it measurable? Is it positive? Is it inspiring? And is it displayed? So the first one, goal setting, is very key. Second one, mental imagery, visualize to actualize. So this is where you're using your senses to help with learning and developing, imagining your performance, and imagining it accomplished by creating or recreating the whole or part of the event. So this actually takes practice, but you'll see some people actually visualizing how they're going to finish, how they're going to run, how they're going to do something before it all happens. And the way that you could do this is 1, vividly see yourself performing successfully. 2, deeply feel yourself performing masterfully. And 3, thoroughly enjoy seeing and feeling yourself winning. So again, this takes mental practice. And all of these different things, the book says, take a couple of them each day and try. You don't need to do all 12. If you can, awesome. But practice 10 to 15 minutes a week. Practice this. All it takes is 10 minutes a week to get into a better habit of it. The third thing is self-talk. And I love the example that he gives in the book. He gives an old Cherokee legend with the tale of 2 wolves. A grandfather explains to his warrior grandson, he says, there are 2 wolves within each of us. One wolf is positive and beneficial, while the other wolf is negative and destructive. These 2 wolves fight for control over us. The grandson is curious and asks, which wolf will win? The grandfather replies, the one you feed. So the mind guides action. If we succeed in regulating our thoughts, then this will help our behavior. Now, you probably can't eliminate all of the negative self-talk, but you do have the power to challenge it and to redirect it and replace it to more positive and useful ideas. So the goal here is to try and recognize them. Like I did when I was running, I told myself, you could do this, maybe you have to smile, and redirect that negative thought. We won't eliminate it, but we can redirect. Number 4, confidence. Flex your confidence muscle. So in order to be successful, you have to believe you can be successful. So one tip that he gives here is remember and think about all those times that you felt truly accomplished, like you felt really successful, and remember those examples to help you overcome adversity. Number 5 is focus. Focus on the now. So focus or selective attention, this is your dedicated task at hand, to exclude everything else. So in a sport, it requires focus to screen out all the fog, all the useless information, to concentrate on the target. So in a sport, it might be the bullseye in archery, or a flag in golf. So think about the things that might distract you. It actually might be internal or external. So an example could be the noise from the crowd, or the weather, or people saying bad things. But internal could be you're hungry, you're tired, you're thirsty, you're sore, or maybe you're having negative emotions, or you're bored. But the key is to clear the fog and have clear skies. And the way that you can do that is being in the present moment, so that you can respond with alertness, curiosity, and skill with whatever comes your way. If you're clearly focused on the present task, then you actually have the freedom to enjoy what you're doing and have a little bit of fun. The next thing is thinking about your breath. So this is connected also to the previous one we just talked about, but proper breathing helps expel the stress and tension from your system and brings you back into the moment. So a good tip is to kind of check in on your breathing throughout the day. And then if you notice yourself a little bit like short of breath, you can take a pause, take an exercise. Bonnie's talked about like the box method, where you can breathe in for 5 seconds, hold for 5 seconds, and then breathe out for 5 seconds. And you do that and regulate your breathing. And this is really interesting because if you do a breathing exercise, when you feel tense or you're caught in this negative thinking cycle, this helps slow your heart rate, calms your thoughts, and you can find stillness in that moment. Next one is mental toughness, and he calls it this inner strength bank account. So being able to remain positive in the most adverse of circumstances. So doing hard things over and over again, especially when you don't feel like it. So going for that run, if you don't feel like it, is like you depositing money in your inner strength bank account. Where did I stop here? So one runner, I think his name was Zapotek, that's how you say it, he said, if it's raining or I'm tired, that's besides the point. I just have to do it. Just do it. So tough times require mental toughness. So build your inner strength bank account. Number 8, anxiety management, going from panicky to pumped. So this is something also I realized the more I got into this, was that a lot of athletes feel anxious before and during a competition, but they accept this as perfectly normal. Anxiety is perfectly normal and actually helps us sharpen our focus. This actually shows that you care about what you're doing. So being nervous before I came out here, an example of how much I care about what I want to be a part of and participate in. Of course, too much anxiety is uncomfortable and can interfere with performance, but a moderate level of anxiety or excitement is actually helpful for optimal performance. The next one is enjoyment. Humor is the best sports medicine. Finding humor in difficult situations is often the best ways to reduce unnecessary stress and increase motivation. And it helps you from being too tense. The more enjoyable the experience, naturally, the better you'll perform. Number 10, body language. Smile. We've been talking about smiling a lot. Give your best. Show that through your body language, with your eye contact, with your speech, with your tone of voice, and value your appearance. And like we've been saying multiple times, smiling actually makes you feel better. Number 11 is intensity and owning your zone. So knowing when to focus and how to focus to be able to get in the zone. So he calls it throttling up or throttling down. So maybe you're almost too excited and you need to just focus a little bit, or maybe you're too scared and you need to focus. So depending on what you need in that moment, you might need to throttle up or down to help you get into your zone. And the last one is personal affirmation. So power phrases for becoming a champion attitude, having that champion attitude. And this was one of the quotes that was, actually, he talks about saying, I am a champion instead of I will be a champion. So I am this. Like we were saying earlier, I am a child of this church, right? These are positive personal affirmations. This quote by author and philosopher Henry David Thoreau says, as a single footstep will not make a path on earth, so a single thought will not make a pathway in the mind. To make a deep physical path, we walk again and again. To make a deep mental path, we must think over and over the kind of thoughts that we wish to dominate our lives. So things we need to think of over and over. So to perform as a champion, you must possess and need to cultivate this champion mindset, the champion's mind. It's okay to fail as long as you don't give up. Give yourself the permission to fall forward, but transform those losses into new beginnings or growing pains rather than thinking them as endpoints. So to give you a quick little summary, it's really tight here, but those are the 12 that we went through to master your mental skills. So you can take a couple every day and try to practice these. So what I wanted to do is we can take these 12 and think a little bit from a spiritual lens. So the first one, taking a picture, okay, one more picture. The first one, thinking about goal setting. And think about, these are kind of the things that came top of mind for me, but there are many, many interpretations that we can take this. So think about your own examples as well, that how you could maybe apply this to your seeking of truth and your faith and your spiritual health. So goal setting. The thing I was thinking of was Jesus gave us a goal. He gave us a mission. He said, go therefore and baptize and tell the people about me. So this is our daily faithful living. What is it that we stand for? Who are we? And why do we call ourselves a follower of Christ? And how does that look like? This is our goal, a reminder of what to do. What is our mission? Number 2, visualing to actualize, that mental imagery. If we think about what Jesus did on the cross, thinking about the good, visualizing that good, it can bring value to your present. Thinking about all of that stuff, all of the beauty that Jesus left us can actually help us. Like, when was the last time you thought about what heaven could be like? Or what that experience could have been for Jesus on the cross? We need to be reminded of that and actually think about what that could look like. Self-talk. I was thinking of the verse with God, all things are possible. What are those things that we're telling ourselves to be able to actually live day to day? I was giving an example earlier. One time when I was running, I had this song playing that's like the Spirit is in you. And suddenly I had this extra strength. You can keep going if the Spirit is in you. It's not just me, right? We're not alone. You can do this. You are a child of God. Number 4 is thinking of confidence. We are in Christ. We are created new. What does that mean? We should have confidence because of what Christ did and what he did in us, for us. Number 5, focus. There's a verse about do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. So are we too busy thinking about the future and the past that we forget the present? Breath control. I was thinking about all these verses about peace. May the Lord grant you peace. This is just one example. There's so much examples of the promise of peace in the Bible. Number 7, mental toughness. This verse comes to mind, which I really love. It's in Romans 5, and it says, part of it says, suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. So suffering and perseverance builds who you are. Number 8, anxiety management. Did you know that do not fear, or words around not being afraid, happens 365 times in the Bible? Like, I don't think it's a coincidence. It's one day represented by one time in the whole year. You have every single day of the year. You can read a different verse about not being afraid. Enjoyment. A joyful heart is good medicine, but a broken spirit dries up the bone. Another example of a teaching in the Bible, have joy. Where there's that verse that talks about where people are mourning, there is like to go there and to to think about. I think that there is joy there. Body language. I was thinking about this verse that talks about listen, stay alert, stand tall in faith, be courageous, be strong. That requires you to think about your body language and standing tall. Intensity. So this is another one that was thinking about being in the zone. What helps you get in the zone? Focusing on the things that matter, the things that are eternal. Fix your eyes on what is true and honorable, right, pure, lovely, admirable. And the last one, personal affirmation. We are so valued. We are a child of God. We are absolutely valued to the point that Jesus would sacrifice his life for us just to save us. That's the utmost example of bringing value to us. So working and building mental skills daily is hard. Doing the right thing takes effort, sacrifice, and suffering, but there are benefits of training and pushing yourself and picking up that cross daily. You can prepare your mind, armor yourself with the truth, and be ready for anything with God by your side. A couple of examples I also wanted to bring up, some biblical characters that showed their self-discipline. We have the example of Daniel and his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were trained, focused on their health and their job at that point and studies, that they did not bow down to this statue, right? Even to the point of death. They were ready to die, but they did not want to bow down to this false idol. They were standing up for the truth and wanted to be on God's side. We have the example of Joseph, who stood up for what is right, even to the point where he ended up in prison, and he was rewarded in the end. But he did not, even so, he would not betray his master. We have the disciples. They gave up everything and committed their life to the mission with Jesus. And it's kind of interesting, the word disciple actually comes from the word discipline, or disculpa in Latin. So it's kind of connected too. And then Jesus, of course, he prepared his whole life until he started his mission and ministry. There was a lot of time that he spent in preparation, leading to his death on the cross, the ultimate example of suffering to save us, to give us life, hope, and a future. He gives us purpose, and he's given us the victory. So, like Shahla read already, we won't read it again, but that verse was actually titled "The Need for Self-Discipline," which I thought was pretty neat in the new in the NIV version, the New International Version. So let's keep this verse in mind as we close, but I want to share and end with a story of one athlete. So it was 9:56 a.m. in Beijing, and there was 4 more minutes until the race was going to start. Now the athlete stood behind his starting block, bouncing a little bit on his toes, and the announcer said his name, and he stepped on the block like he always did. And he swung his arms 3 times like he did before every race since he was 12 years old. He stepped up on the blocks, he got into his stance, and when the gun sounded, he leapt into the pool. But he knew something was wrong. As soon as he hit the water, there was moisture in his goggles, and he couldn't tell if they were leaking from the top or the bottom, but as he broke the water and began swimming, he was hoping, okay, maybe the leak wouldn't be that bad. But the second turn he does in the pool, super blurry all of a sudden. He approached his third and final lap, and the cups of his goggles were completely filled. He couldn't see anything. Couldn't see the line at the bottom of the pool, couldn't see the T marking. The T marking that was on the wall, he couldn't see how many strokes were left. For most swimmers, if you've lost your sight in the middle of an Olympic final, would cause you for panic. But this swimmer was very calm. Everything else had gone according to plan that day. The leaking goggles were a minor deviation, but one he was prepared for. His coach had made him swim in a pool in the dark, believing that he needed to be ready for any surprise. And he had this routine of having this visualization, these videotapes that he calls in his mind. So he imagined problems like this. So he actually had mentally also rehearsed for this scenario, for a goggle failure. So back in the pool, he's thinking of his last lap, and he's starting to estimate, how many strokes do I have until that final push? 19, 20, maybe 21, and he starts counting. He feels totally relaxed. He's swimming at his full length. Midway through the lap, he starts to go harder, increases effort, and a final eruption that had become one of his main techniques in overwhelming his opponents. He's on 18 strokes. He's getting ready for the wall. He can hear the crowd roaring, but because he's blind, remember, he has no idea if they're cheering for him or for someone else or what. He's going 19, 20. He's like, I need one more. And he goes, and in his videotape in his mind, he made that 21st huge stroke. And that's what he's thinking, I need to do this last stroke. And he glides, and he outstretches his arm, touches the wall. He had timed it perfectly. He took off his goggles, he looked up at the score, and it said, world record next to his name. He'd won another gold. Can you guess who that was? Michael Phelps, exactly. After the race, a reporter asked, so what did it feel like to swim blind? He goes, it felt like I would imagined it to feel. I had imagined it as it would feel. So my question is, actually, this is the picture I found, so you could see how much water was probably getting in there. But my question for us today is, have we trained well enough that we could swim blind? So in other words, are we spiritually in tune so much that we can live no matter what adversity meets us? The plan is to achieve these daily acts of excellence in support of the ultimate goal. Or am I just coasting along all day, just letting it kind of go, however, or am I truly striving for that gold? So my prayer for us today is to run in such a way that we already have the gold. We know we have the gold. Thanks to Jesus, we have that prize. So let us run and live like champions and run for gold. Amen.